Hi, James Kerti here, back with another episode of the HoopsThink show, where we break down the game and build it back up. Really cool guest today, talking with Brian Kopp, who's a Senior Vice President of Sports Solutions at STATS LLC. He works on the awesome camera tracking technology called SportVU. It's in 29 NBA arenas right now. Yes, sir, that is all of them. And it's really been taking the NBA by storm, especially this year. There's some great stats at NBA.com, including how well guys protect the rim, how guys fare grabbing rebounds in their area, how fast they run, how far they run, some really cool stuff. And I'm talking with Brian in this episode about some of the great stuff that SportVU is doing and how teams are using it. So enjoy. I got to give a quick shout out to my boys at Brew Pony. If you're a basketball nerd like me, that means a lot of late nights and early mornings. And that means caffeine. But don't drink crappy coffee. Brew Pony delivers fresh artisan coffee into your mailbox every month. It's very affordable. The coffee is fantastic. And I got you hooked up. 10% off if you go there and enter coupon code HoopsThink. So again, that's www.brewpony.com. 10% off with coupon code HoopsThink. Get on it. Hey, James Kerti back with the HoopsThink show. Here today with Brian Kopp from Stats Inc. talking about SportVU. Brian, how you doing today?
Good, James. How are you?
Doing well, man. Exciting times, exciting times. So first question, to just, kind of jump right into it, assuming most people watching this by now have heard of SportVU, certainly talked about it in the intro a little bit. And I was actually reading an article that David Aldridge wrote for NBA.com last week. I believe you were quoted in there talking about how you had done some kind of presentation with Joe Dumars a couple years ago, and he was talking about how he can use some of the SportVU data to work with Will Bynum a little bit, maybe dribbling a little bit less. And I was wondering, on your end, you certainly got a great look at this. There's kind of this communications divide sometimes we hear about between the analytics people and the basketball people. And how do you feel like SportVU might be able to help, make that divide a little bit smaller and improve communication?
Well, depending on who you talk to, I think some people think this will help. Some people think it'll make it a bigger divide. I think, like anything, it's information and it's how you use it. So,
Sure.
what in some cases, if done right, this should be able to quantify things you're already talking about. You just haven't been able to quantify. So that example with Joe Dumars was one of those. He'd already been saying you're dribbling around too much. He knew enough basketball to know that's a bad thing. Now he can quantify it. And I can't tell you times team told us that if I could just show number or show it in a visual chart rather than just me saying it, it makes a bigger difference from a coaching standpoint, from a learning and teaching standpoint. So I think it should be able to help. I think, again, like anything, this could be used in the right way, very powerful, but in other ways, for some people, they may just turn it off because it's more information and it's not basketball. But, to me, I think it's all part of the spectrum of making the game more intelligent and making the game more fun.
Cool, man. Definitely on board with that. And the Dumars example obviously was really cool. Are there any other examples that maybe you can share here in terms of, specific guys that you've spoken with who have had some of those communications issues improved as a result of using SportVU?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are some, we're very careful about, talking about specific players
of
or
course.
teams. But there are some coaches that look at this data. There's a report we have that it's a very simple report where it counts up every single pass on a possession and then what happens next. So what's your efficiency when you pass it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times? And there's a coach that looks at after every game to see how well are we passing, what kind of shots are we getting after X number of passes. There's a number of teams that are looking at things like fast break defense. How fast are you getting back on defense?
That's a big one.
How many times are you doing it, but from free throw line to free throw line, how fast are you getting back, in what instances, what does that happen? And there was a team last year with one of the younger players early in the season that ran that report and saw that he wasn't getting back very well. And they used that as part of their coaching to say that's a part you need to improve. By the end of the season, he was one of the top guys in that report. So it's stories like that allow you to say, hey, this kind of data should enhance what you're doing to coach your players. It shouldn't take anything away from it. And it gives you data that just hasn't been available before. Things like spacing and speed and distance and impact of one event on many other things. And again, we're very careful to work within the language of the basketball. We don't talk about things like algorithms and data structure and all that to coaches. They don't need to know how complex it is behind the scenes. Just to know that, hey, we're looking at Right now, one of the things we're working on is defensive matchups. So who's guarding whom, even if they don't have the ball, the entire game. And while that's a very complicated problem with a lot of machine learning involved, the out could be as simple as when you're guarding this guy, how many times did he touch it? How many offensive rebounds did he get when you're matched up on him? Those are very powerful, simple reports based on a lot of complicated algorithms and data behind the scenes.
Man, that sounds really cool. And you read my mind. I was just about to ask you about how SportVU could be used to help improve defense. So
Yeah.
the matchup data sounds really interesting. What else are you guys working on in terms of defense? Because, I mean, we've seen, some stuff like Synergy and some of the other tools out there. And, I think a lot of them are fundamentally flawed in some ways. And with you guys having the access to the cameras and the raw data, I feel like that can be more powerful. So what are some other things that you guys are doing defensively?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple advantages. One is we have location data of every player in the ball, and we're doing it through data capture. So because of that, anything we come up with today or next year, we can rerun it to all the data we've had since we started this project 3 years ago. So any new algorithm or data point we come up with, we can retroactively run it through our database and make sure we have it for all those games. I think with defense, it's part of an ongoing conversation. It starts with a lot of the offensive metrics we did, like we can do drives to the basket. So how many times did a guy get to the rim in a half-court set? Or how many times did you get the ball into the post? All those offensive type of metrics using SportVU, you can flip around. So if you can measure how much a guy's getting to the basket, then you can measure how much are you giving it up, or how much are you preventing it when a certain guy's in the court or a certain guy's in the paint. You might have seen on NBA.com, one of the things we launched with defense is protecting the rim.
Yep.
That's what's field goal percentage when a guy's near the basket. It's a very simple way of looking at the impact that a player may have, even when he doesn't block the shot. And as you would expect, you see the Roy Hibberts and the people that you expect as the guys protecting the rim really well up there at the top. Excuse me, the one that people are always get surprised at is Brook Lopez.
Oh, yeah.
He's really effective at protecting the rim. Last season in the data we had, teams drove to the basket 4 times less per 48 when he was on the court.
Oh, wow.
Tops in the league. So just his presence there had an impact on how often they went to the rim. So there's ways to quantify guys in other ways where we can take the offensive metrics we're working on, flip them around on defense. The defensive matchup work will be huge because then we can put that in the context of everything else. So individual matchups and possessions. And then as we're doing the defensive matchups, we're also assigning basically influence ratings on help side defense, because that's really the next wave of this is what's the impact even when you're not the matchup on him. How are you defending? What's the impact you have as a defender when you're not guarding the guy with the ball or even guarding an individual player? So when LeBron has the ball and Paul George is guarding him, what's the impact that some of the other Pacers players have on each moment of the game on guarding LeBron? So it's a very complicated problem. There's a lot of different moving parts to it because we are capturing every point of the game.
Totally.
But defense is really going to be where this could really be a game changer in terms of analytics.
Yeah, and one of the things that occurs to me that seems really cool about that is that you can kind of combine, different of these SportVU metrics to see, to get a little more complete picture, because you can look at, say, how well guys are contesting shots, and then also compare that number with, say, like distance traveled or average speed.
Yep.
And then you can get an idea of how much of it is effort and how much of it is pure physical gifts and maybe how much of it is positioning too. So that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about building different layers of the foundation. The first layer was obviously the tracking itself. The second layer, we spent a good portion of the first year on just taking the tracking data and then integrating that to the play-by-play. So knowing at any point in time when a shot took place, a rebound took place. But now all the layers we're adding on top of that are things like drives to the basket, defensive matchups, everything that does make a difference to each aspect of the game. But as you're saying, they could all be combined. And that's part of the opportunity and the challenge, because there's so much data here and it's all part of that puzzle. And really it's on the teams and really on us to help the teams and help the NBA and help any users of this data going forward. How do you best unlock the data? Because there's a lot of power in there and we want to put it in the right position, in the right context for whoever's using it.
Definitely, man. One thing that I'm kind of curious about, if you can talk about it, I remember reading, and I think it was the David Aldridge article on NBA.com, that the data is available to teams in-game like 60 to 90 seconds or whatever after, stuff happens. So I'm curious, can you talk at all about how teams are using SportVU in-game, maybe to make adjustments and see how they're doing?
Yeah, I think the in-game use is going to be the best way to describe it is you don't want to have to explain something for 10 or 15 seconds. If it's something that's going to be very simple, it's going to be snapshots like, again, that passing report. So at
Hmm.
halftime, you could have a report that says how many times we pass on each possession. So if a coach is wanting to emphasize move the ball a lot and the team's not moving the ball, so that's an easy thing you can look at. Things like rebound chances, so how
Hmm.
active are you around the ball or around the rebound, whether you're getting it or not. So rather than just looking at rebound differential, looking at rebound chance, rebound percentage, the things like distance travel, that's something that's
Sure.
available there to break down different players and their activity. So there's a number of different things in game. The best way to describe it, they're things that are not going to be very complicated. Things like how many times we get the ball in the post, how many times did a certain event happen that we're emphasizing. So just imagine the box score. Coaches are looking at the box score. They're scanning that within 5 seconds to look at simple things like assist to turnover and rebound differential, and that's all they're going to use. And same thing here. It's going to
Gotcha.
be very simple, quick hitters to show tendencies, and it's going to be along the lines of going into this game. One example could be going into this game and want to keep the ball out of certain players' hands, and then at halftime you have a report that says, "Boy, he got 60 touches, and that's
Gotcha.
scored so many times. That's how he's been effective. We got to keep the ball out of his hands." So all the things that all of us grown up and playing heard all the time, now you can actually quantify.
That's great, man. And one thing I like to talk about with guests on the show is just kind of my philosophy that I feel like the best way to evaluate point guards in the NBA is mostly just on how well they run the pick and roll because it's such a core aspect of NBA offenses. And I know it's kind of common for a lot of people to talk about point guards in terms of Derrick Rose has these crazy dunks, Russell Westbrook just scored 30 points, but I feel like the pick and roll is something that is really undervalued because it's been so tough to measure. And I saw some stuff recently where you talked about how you guys are working on some stuff to help teams evaluate how guys run the pick and roll. Is that something you can talk about a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we're actually launching now to teams. We've been working on it over the summer to finalize. And when I say working on, when we do any new report or data,
Mm-hmm.
we do a lot of video review to make sure that we're capturing it the right way. We talk to some of our teams that we work closely with to say, hey, do you feel we're interpreting this the right way? So it's a very transparent process working with our teams. When we look at pick and rolls or ball screens, we're capturing every single ball screen, even if it doesn't lead to an event. I know some other people might just be capturing a ball screen that leads to a shot or a
Right.
turnover or something else. We're capturing every single ball screen, which increases the frequency. We know location of when that event took place, but then the most important aspect is we know who was involved, who was a ball handler, who was a screener, who were each of the defenders.
Yep.
It's pretty interesting to start to look at efficiency of each of those events based on who the screener is, based on, we've done some analysis around basically tandems on defense, where you could take one guy, maybe swap out the guy he's partnering with, and you could
Mm-hmm.
see a pretty dramatic difference in the efficiency on defense when depending on who he's matched up with. And again, I'll be careful not to name names, but
Sure.
there's certainly some teams where you could see the big difference, and you know that the really good defender isn't doing anything different. It's really whoever he's matched up on, and so that could be something you could look at to say, okay, we want to make sure that we improve that aspect of our game. Or you flip it around and say, boy, we better exploit that because that's the least efficient matchup in terms of a pick and roll. Now, again, some of that teams are looking at and seeing with their eyes. Now we're able to quantify it and provide a lot more context. And with that, then you have intelligence around how that pick and roll is being defended. So even a simple action like pick and roll, we had to spend a lot of time and effort on making sure we got that event nailed down. But once we have that, again, it's almost endless the number of things you can do with that kind of information. I think you're right. I mean, it's obviously a big part of the NBA. And what's interesting is we're starting to do this in college. We have a couple teams
Ooh.
signed up. We're starting with Duke, Marquette, and Louisville. And of those
Okay.
teams, I was just in Louisville last week with Coach Pitino, and that's a big part of their offense. And so they want to be able to compare that kind of data at the college level too. So all the work we're doing now hopefully will become a big part of the way people talk about and analyze basketball, both within the locker room and within the front office. But we want this to become part of the conversation for people at home and the fans too.
Cool, man. That sounds really great. And one more question, then I'll let you get going. Um, do you know of any ways that teams are using SportVU as a way to, keep an eye on some of their own guys, maybe who are on minutes limits or, who have had a history of knee issues, and, they're kind of looking at wear and tear on their guys or potential injury flags. Is that something you know anything about?
Absolutely, man. It's a whole. We have there's a gentleman who works for me, Paul Robbins, and
Mm-hmm.
his entire background is athlete performance and training. And he came to me about a year and a half ago because he heard about this data, and he said, this is something that could revolutionize the way that trainers
Wow.
and strength coaches prepare players. Now, it's not going to be the answer. It's part of the puzzle. It's
Sure.
part of what goes on in practice and in their training and in their nutrition plans, and it's the whole view of the athlete they're looking at. But what had been missing is game. There's so much they do in practice and training sessions, and they monitor and they collect data and they look at all this information, and they go to a game and they have no information other than what they see with their eyes. Now we're capturing a lot of information where it's not just speed and distance, but we create formulas to individually break down, are you running, jogging, walking, sprinting? Are you accelerating, decelerating? There were some teams last year where guys were coming back from ACL, as that exact example, and we were looking at how much they're cutting on the court, and that became part of their recovery plan. And it's up to the team. It doesn't mean we're going to go to a team and say, hey, don't play this player
of course
as much because of what happened. But at the very least, the trainers would say, hey, now I know how to influence his recovery plan. Now I know how to say to the coach, hey, maybe we should take it easy next game in practice because he had this huge intensity the night before in the games. And you can really start to see, not only is it between games, but a lot of it is leading up to how does it change throughout the game? So what does their intensity and movement look like near the end of the game?
Totally.
More important is you get around to the playoffs. Deeper into the playoffs, you can start to see the intensity really ratchet up. And the question there is, how much will guys have left in the tank? And that's really what everything they're doing from a training standpoint is leading up to making sure that guys in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, fourth quarter, they still got enough to go other than just adrenaline.
That sounds really cool, man. One other thing I'm looking forward to seeing, is as we keep gathering more data, as seasons go on, is, seeing if there's any sort of correlation or causation possibly between, the wear and tear that we can observe with SportVU and guys getting, either nagging or big time injuries. Wondering if we'll see anything there.
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting part about this season is that we have every game now.
Oh, yeah.
Up until this point, even last year, we got up to 15 teams, which was great. But we still had half the games we were missing. So the most exciting part of our partnership with the NBA is we have every single game. And it's really just the starting of making this data more powerful, making it more meaningful, and being able to draw much more concrete conclusions once you have more data throughout this season and then in seasons to come, because the analysis will only get stronger and better, and the use of it will get better as there's more history to look back on.
Exactly. I'm really excited about it too. Thanks for stopping by today, man. And as we wrap this up, is there anything you kind of like to leave people watching this with? Maybe things to look for from SportVU as the season goes on?
Well, I think, definitely keep your eye on NBA.com and the player tracking section. We're going to be adding things there probably in the next few months before the All-Star break. We're talking to the NBA about adding more and more reports. And then, there'll be a lot more of this that'll start to filter into the media, which we're excited about, either starting on NBA.com and NBA TV, but hopefully to other media partners over time. So again, it's just a beginning, and hopefully this becomes part of just the way people talk about basketball. That's really our goal.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, James.
Really cool episode. Thanks for tuning in to see me talk with Brian in this one. Love what SportVU's doing, some really cool stuff, and I'm excited to see what they do as the season goes on. It's been a really cool start, and as we record this, there's just been a handful of games of data, but I think with a full season, it's going to be really amazing. So stay tuned here. Hope to have Brian back on again sometime in the near future. And if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, get on the email list at www.hoopsthink.com. It's the best way to get the latest updates from HoopsThink. Catch you later.